Good evening.
Good evening, Chair.
Senator Ketter.
Thank you very much. My questions to the Minister. Minister, I take it you're aware of the news articles published over the last 12 months regarding allegations that a Mr Hugh Okremienko of company Hugh Element attended Defence Barracks to Spruik Financial Advice?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. And I refer...
Some of them, I can't attest to being aware of all of them, but I am aware of them.
Okay. And I refer you to my question on notice number 672, tabled on the 30th of January this year, and your response of the 22nd of March 2018. I was going to just follow up on that.
Mm-hmm.
Have you got that? Have you got that information there?
It depends what your question is, Senator.
Okay. Your response to my question was that there is no evidence to indicate that Mr Okremienko provided financial advice to soldiers prior to or following operational deployments. Now, can you advise what investigation was undertaken by the Department of Defence to inform your answer of the 22nd of March?
Well, I think it's. I think probably the Defence is better placed, Senator, to indicate what the investigation was. But certainly, based on the advice that I received in the initial process of this question being asked, indicated to me that this had not been the case. It later came to my attention that there were circumstances which indicated it had occurred. So I responded with the information I had available at the time. After that it became available to me, Senator, I sought a further review to be made into the matter, but I'd like to ask Chief of Army to go through the details further.
Yes, if I could ask,
Thanks,
just
Senator.
in terms of the investigation that was conducted, which led up to the Minister's response on the 22nd of March.
Certainly, Senator. Lieutenant General Angus Campbell, Chief of the Army. Senator, just to put a couple of things in context, the Australian Defence Force, Defence, Army as a component of the ADF does not in any way wish to see our soldiers misled or manipulated by, as you describe, financial spruikers. And indeed, in about 2006, the ADF Financial Services Consumer Centre was established to seek to offer impartial financial education, not personal advice, to ADF members. And in doing so, to create an ADF financial advice referral program so as to assist ADF members in privately obtaining financial advice from services that are free from remuneration-based conflicts of interest. So that's just the background setting for Defence and the ADF's approach. In terms of the newspaper reporting, which is as much of interest to Army senior leadership as it is to you, and indeed to the journalists and soldiers, we have, since those reports have been released, been seeking to invite soldiers to come forward if they have concerns. Now, I appreciate there will be different reasons why people may or may not wish to raise concerns. To date, while some soldiers have come forward to say they have used different financial circumstances in financial advisors in circumstances beyond bases, none have come forward to express concern for the appropriateness of financial advice being received. Now, that's not answering your question yet, so I'm getting to that. The point of what I'm saying is that we are, as a proverb would say, we're crossing the river by feeling the stones. We're finding our way. We do not have soldiers who are coming to the Army who could do something about it, perhaps as freely as they might be going to a journalist, which means that we looked at the articles being written, and a review by the commanding officer of the unit which we understood to be involved or potentially being purported to be involved was directed to look at the question of whether financial advisors had been undertaking this kind of personal advice in the unit in contravention to standing ADF policies and defence policies. Now, the unit investigation, I'll just read it here. The investigation established that while several personnel from 2RAR, the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment based in Townsville, had private business with the organisation and the persons mentioned in the newspaper article. All dealings were conducted external to Laverack Barracks, and no evidence can be found that the individual's name provided financial advice to soldiers prior to or following operational deployments or indeed on barracks. Now, we did know of interest in those persons named in the newspaper articles, interest in providing or at least offering sponsorship to some sporting bodies within the military in Townsville, within the Army in Townsville. That's where we got to when we first advised the Minister, and hence her reply to the Senate. As we're crossing this river, or to mix a metaphor, peeling the onion, we find subsequently that a different unit, not ever mentioned in the newspaper articles, and still with no soldiers coming to advise us despite continuing requests for information that any might wish to offer, a different unit may well have invited a financial advisory service onto the barracks at a particular time in 2016. Now, that was advised to me middle of last week, advised to the Minister, and it was quickly clear that we had been asking a question down a narrow straw, absent any primary sources, and using newspaper articles as the basis of doing the business. So in parallel, the Minister, quite understandably, and I both were looking at the question of, and a wider review effort has been directed across all Army units, all formations, in all locations, to ask the question, first to remind and reinforce the standing policy. Second, to ask, has there been any known contravention of that policy in recent years? And third, to reinforce the question or the invitation that we welcome any soldiers letting us know. We don't need to know their personal particular circumstance, simply welcoming any soldiers let us know if they feel that they have experienced, whether directly through a financial spruiker being welcomed to a unit, or indirectly by someone finding themselves in a unit location for other purposes and generating a spruiking effect. We want to know, we don't want this to happen, and I'm very, very keen to see any circumstances of it stamped out, and I would welcome any detail that might be offered from, whether it's from journalists or from our soldiers.
Okay, well, look, I was very patiently listening to your answer, Lieutenant General. I appreciate that response. With respect, though, my question of the 30th of January did clearly indicate that Laverack Barracks in Townsville was one of the potential areas to be looked at, and the response received from the Minister was that there is no evidence to indicate that Mr Okremienko provided financial advice to soldiers, and it went on to say prior to or following operational deployments. Now, that wasn't specified in my question, but that was, I accept that was the media reporting was around that. So my question was to you, I was interested firstly in the nature of the investigation that you conducted, because subsequently you did find that there was authorised access granted to Laverack Barracks in April of 2016 to provide generic financial advice to unit personnel, according to a recent media article.
Yes, Senator. So as I'm saying, we understood the concern to be centred on a particular unit. Understood it perhaps because of the nature of the articles being prepared, and so your inquiry about Townsville we understood to be an inquiry about the articles relating to soldiers claiming with regard to a particular unit. And as I say, without the primary advice of soldiers coming forward, that was our mistake. And that's why not only Townsville and to a particular time, but more broadly, the question has now been posed across the Army.
Yeah. So, Minister, my next question is to you. Do you concede that you may have misled the Senate in relation to this matter?
No, Senator, I don't agree that I misled the Senate. I gave a response based on the advice and the information that was provided to me at the time, on which I was only able to rely on that, Senator. I'm not in a position to make those inquiries through the organisation myself. So I sought that advice. I received incorrect advice, and I provided that in an answer, but in no way was that an intentional misleading of the Senate, Senator. Okay.
Well, do you at least concede that the investigations undertaken in relation to that question were insufficient to appropriately inform you to provide
Senator, that's why I asked for a further review to be undertaken myself, yes.
Okay. So, can you explain why the department subsequently advised the media that the Minister has directed Defence to conduct further investigations? What prompted you to do that?
Because there was further information that came to light, Senator.
Okay.
As we've just discussed between the Chief of Army, yourself and myself.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask whether you were surprised to learn that Mr Okremienko's company, Hugh Element, was granted access to Laverack Barracks, as I indicated earlier?
Well, Senator, my understanding of the investigation or the review that and the information that came forward in that process was that there was more than one context in which that occurred, including the sports sponsorship matter, a matter of potential efforts to sponsor sports activities, which is not unusual across the organisation, as well as the reference to financial advice. I am surprised that and disappointed, Senator, that given there are guidelines in place, that sort of permission or authorisation would have been granted, not in accordance with those guidelines.
Okay. So the latest articles suggest that, Lieutenant General, you've directed Army units to cease visits by non-listed financial advisors in line with existing defence policy. Can you tell me what the existing defence policy is that you're referring to there, and when it came into effect?
I cannot give you the quote of the title of the policy, Senator. I'll take that. In fact, I'll take it on notice to advise you of the policy and its date of establishment.
I think the date was around 2006, Senator, when we set up the Financial Services Consumer Centre.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I think it was about 2006 when we set up the Financial Consumer Services Centre, but we'll take it on notice.
Okay. All right. And can you tell me, just going back to your investigation in respect of Laverack Barracks, are you able to tell me who received the request for Mr Okremienko's company to attend the barracks in 2016?
We understand it was one of the other units at the barracks that was not as we first believed it to be. The unit we believe it was under question, which was the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment. It was one of the other units.
Right.
And, Senator, as this investigation unfolds, I'd like to get to the end of it so that I can be more confident that we're speaking of one organisation, or if there are incidents in other locations. I do think that we have to be an organisation alert and wary to what are essentially predatory behaviours.
Sure. And can you tell me at what level was the request to attend the barracks approved?
I cannot tell you that at this stage, Senator. I can't confidently tell you at this stage. I believe it was unit command level, but I will be advised of that with the work the review is undertaking.
Okay. Now, coming back to this comment you've made about the reports that this company, Hugh Element, may have had access to defence personnel since 2009 on Army barracks to discuss sponsorship and support for defence support teams. Are you aware that Mr Okremienko was the subject of an ASIC investigation in 2010 about giving financial advice without a licence?
I have recently become aware, Senator.
Okay. Can you tell me when that occurred?
When I became aware,
Yes.
in about the last week and a half, Senator.
Okay. And Minister, do you have any details of Mr Okremienko's attendance on Australian Army bases in the years following ASIC's investigation?
Not specifically, Senator. The date of the investigation?
No, details of Mr Okremienko's attendance.
I'm asking you for the date of the ASIC investigation, I'm sorry.
Back in 2010.
So since then?
Yes.
I don't have details, Senator, but if we take those on notice, as the Chief of Army has indicated, we'll provide that to you, if there are any.
The other part of your response on the back in March was that all Australian Defence Force approved financial services are provided via the Australian Defence Force Financial Services Consumer Council. Is this the policy that you're referring to that
That's correct, Senator.
started in 2006?
That's correct, Senator.
Right. Okay.
And so if they are authorised, or as this answer says, approved, then that occurs under the auspices of the ADF Financial Services Consumer Council and the arrangements that are attached to that policy.
Which is financial education, not advice.
Okay, because these are not, your direction is that visits by non-listed financial advisors cease.
That's correct, because they would not be covered by the approved financial services that fall under that Financial Services Consumer Council arrangement, Senator.
Okay.
Is that all, Senator Keller? If you
yes,
like, I can go to... You finished on
yes,
those?
thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Anderson.